The communication array came alive, sending signals across all known frequencies throughout local space. What appeared on every screen across both alien fleets would be analyzed and studied by experts for generations to come. A human face materialized on every display screen throughout the Zephyrian and Hegemony fleets. The face belonged to a young woman with calm eyes that seemed to hold knowledge beyond her apparent years. Captain Lisa Morgan looked directly into the cameras as if she could see each individual commander watching her. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the United Nations ship Defiant." She began speaking clearly so her words would carry across the void. "We represent the human species of Earth, and we have a proposal for both of your fleets." Admiral Kessistar mandibles clicked frantically. Human Earth. She had never heard of this species or planet in any of their extensive databases. The same confusion spread across the Hegemony fleet. Commander Vex-High cybernetic implants worked at maximum capacity, searching through every known star chart and species catalog in their memory banks. Nothing. No reference to humans or Earth appeared anywhere in galactic records. Captain Morgan continued speaking as if unaware of the confusion she was causing. "We understand that you are fighting for control of the Nexus Gate. We also understand that this conflict has already claimed millions of lives across 17 star systems." How could she possibly know about the 17 star systems? That information was classified at the highest levels by both governments. Only the most senior military commanders had access to those casualty reports. "We propose a temporary ceasefire while we demonstrate something that might change your perspective on this war entirely," Morgan said with the same calm voice. Admiral Kessistar and Commander Vex-High found themselves in the unusual position of needing to communicate with each other. Their ships were light minutes apart, but both leaders felt the same mixture of curiosity and concern about these unknown humans. Commander Vex-High was the first to respond, his artificial voice carrying across subspace channels. "Commander Vex-High of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet unknown vessel, you have no authority to interfere in this conflict. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Admiral Kessistar quickly added her own response. "Admiral Kessistar of the Zephyrian Defense Force. We agree with the Hegemony demand. This is a private war between our civilizations." Captain Morgan's expression remained unchanged, but those watching carefully might have noticed the hint of a smile at the corners of her mouth. "I understand your position," she replied calmly. "But before you make any decisions about destroying us, perhaps you should consider this demonstration." On the bridge of the Defiant, Lieutenant Walsh looked up from her console. "Captain, both fleets are powering their weapon systems. All ships are preparing to fire." "Acknowledged," Morgan replied, without taking her eyes off the communication camera. "Execute protocol." 7 Chief Engineer Brooks' fingers moved across her control panels. Protocol 7 initiated, activating demonstration mode for both fleets to observe. Across both alien fleets, every sensor operator watched in growing horror as their instruments began reporting readings that violated the fundamental laws of physics. The human ship was not just powering weapons, it was doing something that should have been completely impossible. Defiant began to shift in space. Not move in the traditional sense, but shift. Its position became uncertain, as if the ship existed in multiple locations at the same time. Quantum mechanics stated this was impossible for anything larger than subatomic particles, yet it was happening on a scale of several kilometers. Admiral, the Zephyrian sensor operator, reported, his voice tight with disbelief. "The human vessel is exhibiting quantum superposition. It is occupying 17 different positions in space simultaneously." On the Hegemony flagship, similar reports flooded the command bridge. "Commander, our targeting systems cannot lock onto the vessel. Every time we attempt to acquire a target, the ship appears somewhere else." The demonstration continued. The Defiant suddenly appeared in a single position directly behind the largest Hegemony dreadnought. Then just as quickly, it materialized beside the Zephyrian flagship. Then it was back between both fleets again. Each transition was instantaneous, with no energy buildup, no spatial distortion, no warning of any kind. The impossible ship was teleporting at will, covering distances that should have taken minutes in the blink of an eye. Every law of physics both civilizations understood was being casually ignored. Captain Morgan's voice returned to the communication channel, still perfectly calm. As you can see, we represent a slight technological advancement over your current capabilities. Now about that temporary ceasefire we mentioned. In the depths of space, two of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations stared at what appeared to be a primitive alien craft and realized they might not understand the universe as well as they had believed. Commander HFY was the first to break the stunned silence that had settled over both fleets. How are you accomplishing these maneuvers? Accomplishing what Captain Morgan asked with apparent innocence. The teleportation, the quantum effects, the impossible positioning. HFY's voice carried frustration and growing concern. Oh, that Morgan replied with a casual wave of her hand. Basic probability manipulation. We discovered how to convince reality that we are more likely to be in one location than another. It is really quite simple once you understand that the universe operates on statistical probabilities rather than absolute fixed rules. The xenobiologist on Admiral Kessitar Bridge collapsed from shock. Several other crew members had to sit down as the implications of what they were witnessing began to sink in. Morgan continued her explanation as if discussing the weather. Probability manipulation allows us to suggest to the universe that certain outcomes are more likely than others. Reality is surprisingly cooperative once you learn the proper methods of communication. Both alien fleets found themselves in completely unfamiliar territory. They were facing technology that seemed to operate outside the boundaries of known science. Their most advanced weapons and defenses were useless against an enemy that could simply choose not to be where they were aiming. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted in ways that neither the Zephyrians nor the hegemony could have imagined. The arrival of humanity had changed everything. The Zephyrian battle fleet hung in space like deadly jewels against the darkness of the void. Their crystalline hulls caught and reflected the light from 3 dying stars in the distance. Admiral Kestar stood on her command bridge watching the tactical displays with growing tension. Her forearms moved restlessly as she studied the red dots that represented enemy ships moving closer through the asteroid field. The war had been going on for 17 years now. Both sides wanted control of the Nexus Gate, which was the only stable wormhole connecting the outer spiral to the core worlds. Whoever controlled that gate would control trade routes and the flow of resources across 17 star systems. Billions of lives depended on the outcome of this battle. Kessitar looked at her tactical officer who was working frantically at his console. His reptilian features showed the strain of constant vigilance. The enemy hegemony forces were getting closer with every passing moment. Hegemony forces are moving into attack formation, the tactical officer reported. His voice was tense. 37 dreadnoughts and over 200 support craft are advancing toward our position. Kessitar clicked her mandibles in acknowledgement. This would be the decisive battle. The winner would control the most important strategic location in this sector of the galaxy. The loser would face economic collapse and eventual surrender. Prepare all weapons systems, she commanded. Signal the entire fleet to ready for combat. We cannot allow them to reach the gate. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had fought this enemy many times before and knew what was at stake. The Zephyrian fleet was outnumbered, but their crystal technology gave them advantages in speed and maneuverability. Suddenly, every sensor array on the bridge began screaming warnings at once. The normal hum of the ship's systems was overwhelmed by alarms and alert signals. The bridge fell into stunned silence as crew members stared at their instruments in disbelief. Admiral, the sensor operator, called out, his voice cracking with shock. We are detecting a massive spatial distortion directly between our fleet and the enemy forces. The main display screen showed something that made everyone on the bridge question what they were seeing. Space itself appeared to be twisting and bending like liquid metal. Energy readings were so high that their instruments could not measure them accurately. Both fleets, the Zephyrian and the hegemony, had stopped their advance toward each other. What in the void is that? Whispered the navigation officer. The distortion suddenly collapsed inward like a bubble bursting. From the center of it emerged something that defied all understanding of physics and engineering. It was clearly a spacecraft, but unlike anything in their extensive databases, where Zephyrian vessels were graceful curves of living crystal, and hegemony craft were brutal angular shapes of dark metal. This newcomer looked primitive, almost crude. Its hull appeared to be made of some dull gray metal covered with random protrusions, sensor arrays and weapon ports that seemed to follow no logical design pattern. The impossible part was not its appearance, but its size. The vessel was enormous, easily 3 times larger than the biggest hegemony dreadnought. Yet their sensors insisted it had appeared from nowhere. No warp signature, no quantum tunnel collapse, no dimensional fold residue. It had simply materialized in space as if it had always been there. Scan it immediately, Kessistar ordered, her voice barely controlled. I want to know everything about that ship. Species, technology level, armament, crew, numbers, everything. The sensor operator worked frantically at his console, his scales shifting color with agitation. I am getting conflicting readings, Admiral. The hull composition appears to be basic iron and carbon alloys, materials so primitive they should not hold together under the stress of faster-than-light travel. But the energy signature... He paused and ran the scans again. The energy signature is beyond anything we can measure. Across the battlefield, identical scenes were playing out on hegemony vessels. Commander Vexhai stood on his bridge staring at the same impossible readings. His cybernetic implants were processing data at maximum capacity, trying to make sense of what his instruments were telling him. It must be some kind of trick, he told his subordinates. Some new, Zephyrian stealth technology they have been developing in secret. But even as he spoke, he knew that was not true. The Zephyrians on their ships looked just as confused and shocked as his own crew. The mysterious vessel hung motionless in space, positioned perfectly between the 2 fleets. It made no aggressive moves, sent no communications, and deployed no visible weapons. The ship simply existed there, impossibly defying everything. Both civilizations thought they knew about space travel technology and the basic laws of physics. The war that had consumed 17 years and millions of lives suddenly seemed less important than understanding this impossible newcomer on the bridge of the human vessel. UNS Defiant. Captain Lisa Morgan stood with her hands behind her back, watching the tactical display with quiet satisfaction. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. Their faces showed no fear, despite being surrounded by hundreds of alien warships that could destroy them in seconds. Status report. Morgan requested, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced impossible odds before. Both fleets have stopped advancing. Captain reported, Lieutenant Amy Walsh from her position at the tactical station. All weapons systems are powered but not targeting us. They appear to be completely confused by our presence. Chief Engineer Nina Brooks looked up from her console with a slight smile. The probability drive is functioning perfectly. Captain, we have them exactly where we want them. The first phase of our plan is complete. Morgan nodded approvingly. The arrival had gone better than expected. Now came the real test of their strategy. Open a communication channel to both fleets, she ordered. It is time to introduce ourselves to the galaxy. The communication array activated, broadcasting on all known frequencies throughout the local space. What would follow would change the course of galactic history forever. The galaxy had frozen in place as humanity made its dramatic entrance into the ancient war. Admiral Kester found herself calling for a fleet-wide tactical meeting, while an unknown alien vessel hung impossibly in space nearby. Her command crew had run every possible scan, consulted every database, and analyzed every piece of sensor data multiple times. The results were always the same: impossible. Probability manipulation, her chief science officer muttered. The elderly Zephyrian, whose crystalline skin had grown dim with age, shook his head in confusion. They speak of it as if it is basic engineering rather than theoretical physics across the void. Commander Vexhai was having similar discussions with his senior staff. His cybernetic implants had been working at maximum capacity for hours, processing massive amounts of sensor data and finding nothing but contradictions. Sir, reported his tactical officer, we have identified at least 47 separate weapon systems on the human vessel, but we cannot determine what any of them actually do. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases, weapons that do not exist, wielded by a species that does not exist on a ship that should not exist, Vexhai said with frustration. And somehow they know about our strategic objectives, our casualty reports and classified information that even our closest allies do not have access to. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Morgan was reviewing reports from her own crew, with considerably more satisfaction than the alien commanders were experiencing. Psychological impact assessment, she asked Lieutenant Walsh. Exceptional, Captain. Both fleets have ceased all aggressive actions and are focused entirely on us. Stress indicators on their vessels are extremely high. Their crews are experiencing significant confusion and, concerned Chief Engineer Brooks looked up from her station with satisfaction. The probability drive is performing beautifully, Captain. We have convinced local spacetime that we are simultaneously the most threatening and most harmless object in the system. How can we be both harmless and threatening at the same time? Lieutenant Walsh asked with curiosity. Well, Brooks pointed out with logic. We have not actually hurt anyone yet. We are simply being aggressively confusing to their understanding of reality. Captain Morgan nodded with approval. The plan was proceeding exactly as they had hoped. Sometimes the most effective weapon was not a gun, but a question mark that challenged everything. The enemy thought they knew. Captain interrupted communications. Officer Kate Phillips. We are receiving a joint transmission from both fleet commanders. They are requesting a meeting to discuss the situation. Are they? Morgan said with interest. What are their proposed terms for this meeting? Neutral ground limited, personnel, full diplomatic immunity. They want to discuss what they are calling the immediate cessation of impossible activities in their operational theater. Morgan could not help but smile at that particular phrasing. Accept their terms, but add, one condition of our own. The meeting will take place aboard the Defiant. Her bridge crew exchanged concerned glances. Inviting potentially hostile alien commanders aboard their ship seemed extremely risky, but they had learned to trust their captain. Strategic thinking over the years, Captain Walsh said carefully. Is that wise? We do not know their true intentions toward us. Lieutenant Morgan replied with quiet confidence. After what they have witnessed us do today, do you really think they are going to try anything aggressive while standing on our deck? 2 hours later, Admiral Kessitar and Commander Vexhai found themselves in the Defiant main conference room. The room contained what appeared to be the most primitive and advanced technology they had ever encountered simultaneously. The walls displayed star charts of impossible accuracy, including systems that had not been discovered yet by either civilization. The furniture was basic metal and synthetic materials that would not have been out of place on a simple colony transport. Yet the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy that made their instruments readings. Spike, Captain Morgan entered with 2 companions, Lieutenant Walsh and Chief Engineer Brooks. 3 humans appeared remarkably young by galactic standards, yet they moved with the confidence of beings who had seen the universe. Deepest secrets. Admiral Kessitar, Commander Vexhai, welcome aboard the Defiant, Morgan said as they took seats around a conference table that looked like it had been constructed in someone's personal workshop. I trust your shuttles had no difficulty with our docking procedures. Your docking procedures are unique, Admiral Kessitar admitted. Her shuttle had been guided in by some form of tractor beam that felt more like a gentle suggestion than a mechanical force. How did you convince our shuttle to want to be inside your docking bay? Same principle as everything else we do, Morgan replied. Reality is remarkably cooperative once you learn how to ask nicely instead of demanding. Commander Vexhai leaned forward, his cybernetic eyes focusing intently on the human captain. We have scanned your vessel extensively. According to our instruments, it is constructed of primitive materials using technology that should not work. Yet it clearly does work in ways that violate established physics, established by whom Chief Engineer Brooks asked with genuine curiosity. Physics is not a set of rules that someone wrote down and posted throughout the universe. It is simply a description of how things tend to behave most of the time. We learned how to influence the most of the time part. The aliens exchanged glances that conveyed volumes of confusion and growing concern about what they were dealing with. Let me ask you both a question, Captain Morgan said, settling back in her chair. How long have you been fighting over the Nexus Gate 17 standard cycles? Admiral Kessitar replied automatically. And how? Many beings have died in that time. Approximately 4.7 million military personnel. Commander Vexhai admitted reluctantly. Civilian casualties are estimated at 32 million additional deaths. 37 million lives, Morgan repeated, quietly. And you are fighting over a single wormhole because you both believe controlling it will give you a decisive strategic advantage in this sector. The Nexus Gate is the only stable passage between the outer spiral and the core worlds, Kestar, explained as if speaking to someone unfamiliar with basic galactic geography. Control of trade routes, military supply lines, resource distribution, all depend on access to that gateway. What if Morgan interrupted gently? I told you that there are, actually, 43 stable wormholes connecting your regions of space, and we know the exact location of every single one. The silence in the conference room became absolute. Both alien commanders stared at the human captain as if she had just claimed to be able to create matter from nothing. The holographic star chart that appeared above the conference table was so detailed and accurate that both alien commanders immediately recognized their respective territories' trade routes and classified military installations. But what made them both lean forward in stunned disbelief were the 43 pulsing blue points scattered throughout the display. Each one marked what appeared to be a stable wormhole. "This is impossible," whispered Admiral Kessitar, her crystalline fingers moving through the air above the hologram. "We have surveyed these regions for centuries. There are no other stable wormholes in our territory." Commander Vexahai. Cybernetic implants were working at maximum capacity, comparing the display to every star chart in hegemony databases. Our deep space sensors would have detected spatial anomalies of this magnitude. This data cannot be accurate. Chief Engineer Brooks spoke up with barely contained excitement. That is because you are looking for the wrong indicators. You are scanning for gravitational distortions and exotic matter signatures, the traditional signs of artificial wormhole construction. But these are natural phenomena that have been encouraged to develop. Encouraged Vexhai artificial voice carried disbelief. Think of it like gardening. Captain Morgan explained calmly. You do not create flowers from nothing. You provide the right conditions for them to grow naturally. We simply identified regions of space where the quantum fabric was naturally unstable and gave reality a few gentle suggestions about what might happen in those areas. Lieutenant Walsh activated another section of the display, showing real-time sensor readings from various points throughout space. These wormholes have been stable for approximately 3 Earth years. We have been using them for exploration and mapping purposes. 3 years. Kessitar mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among her species. You have had access to 43 stable wormholes for 3 years, and you are only revealing them now. We have been observing, Morgan replied simply. Learning about local politics, trade patterns, military dispositions, understanding who controls what and why before we made official contact with anyone. The implications struck both commanders simultaneously. If humans had been observing for 3 years with access to 43 wormholes, they possessed intelligence on every major military installation, trade route, and strategic resource in both empires. Vexhai was the first to voice the obvious question. What do you want from us? Morgan smiled, the first truly warm expression either alien had seen from her. We want you to stop killing each other over something that is not actually scarce. She gestured to the holographic display highlighting several of the newly revealed wormholes. This one leads directly to the industrial systems you have been fighting over. This one provides a shorter route to the agricultural worlds. This one bypasses the Nexus Gate entirely and reduces travel time to the core worlds by 40%. The resources you have been killing each other for access to are available through multiple alternative routes. The strategic advantages you are fighting for become meaningless when both sides have equal access to superior alternatives. Kessitar studied the display intently, her tactical mind immediately grasping the implications. If these wormholes are real and stable, then control of the Nexus Gate becomes unnecessary. Unnecessary, Brooks corrected, just not worth 37 million lives. Why, Vexhai asked bluntly. Why reveal this information? What benefit do humans gain from ending our conflict? It was a reasonable question, and Morgan had expected it. Because we are about to face a much bigger problem, and we are going to need all the help we can get. The conference room fell silent except for the gentle humming of the ship. Impossible engines. Explain, both commanders said simultaneously, then glanced at each other with surprise at their coordination. Lieutenant Walsh manipulated the holographic display, pulling back to show a wider view of the entire galaxy. At the very edge of the map, something was moving, a vast dark mass that seemed to absorb light, rather than reflect it. Our long-range sensors detected them approximately 6 months ago. Morgan explained, her voice taking on a more serious tone. They are still outside our galaxy, but they are moving in this direction at an acceleration rate that suggests they will arrive within 5 standard years. Who are they? Kessistar asked, though. Something in her tone suggested she already feared the answer. We do not know. Morgan admitted. We call them the Silence because every star system they pass through stops transmitting. No communications, no energy signatures, no signs of life. Just complete silence. The holographic display zoomed in on the edge of the dark mass, showing what appeared to be consumed star systems, not destroyed or conquered, but somehow completely emptied of all energy and life. How many systems? Vex High question came out as barely a whisper. So far, approximately 15,000 solar systems. The number hung in the air like a death sentence for every living being in the galaxy. Brooks leaned forward, her expression becoming grim. Based on their current trajectory and acceleration, they will reach the outer edges of inhabited space within 5 years. When they arrive, every territorial dispute, every trade war, every border conflict becomes completely irrelevant. You are saying we should stop fighting each other, Kessistar said slowly, and start preparing for this silence. I am saying, Morgan replied with quiet intensity, that humanity spent 3 years preparing for first contact with galactic civilization because we knew this day would eventually come. We developed technology that seems impossible to you because we needed tools that could face the impossible, and now we desperately need allies. She stood up, placing her hands flat on the conference table. The question facing both of your civilizations is this. Do you want to spend the next 5 years killing each other over a single wormhole? Or do you want to spend them building the greatest defensive alliance this galaxy has ever seen? Outside the conference room windows, both alien fleets still hung in space. Their weapons were powered but no longer aimed at each other. Instead, they were all pointed at the human ship that had somehow made their entire war seem small and pointless in the face of a greater threat. But now they understood why humanity had intervened. The galaxy was about to face something far worse than any conflict between civilizations. The transformation began immediately and changed everything. Within hours of the revelation aboard the Defiant, both the Zephyrian and Hegemony fleets had powered down from combat readiness and established joint communication protocols for the first time in their civilization's history. The sight of traditional enemies coordinating their movements sent shockwaves through both governments and triggered emergency sessions in their respective ruling councils. Captain Morgan stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display as alien ships that had been trying to destroy each other that morning now shared sensor data and began coordinated deep space scans toward the galactic rim where the Silence approached. Status report on the intelligence sharing she requested. Lieutenant Walsh consulted her console. Both fleets have transmitted complete star charts of their territories, military asset inventories, and technological specifications. They have also provided historical data on 17 other species in this sector that we have not made contact with yet. And the wormhole verification teams. Chief Engineer Brooks looked up with satisfaction. 12 joint exploration missions launched within the past 4 hours. Both sides are confirming the stability and navigability of our mapped wormholes. Admiral Kessistar personally led the team through the passage that completely bypasses the Nexus Gate. The irony was not lost on any of them. The humans had ended a 17-year war by proving that the thing being fought over was not unique or even particularly important. Captain Communications Officer Phillips called out, "We are receiving priority transmissions from both the Zephyrian Council of Crystals and the Hegemony High Command. They are requesting immediate diplomatic contact with Earth Air," Morgan said with amusement. And what is the nature of these requests? Formal alliance negotiations, technology sharing agreements, and Phillips paused, checking her translation software. Something the Zephyrians are calling emergency unity protocols, and the hegemony is terming existential threat response coordination. Morgan nodded with approval. Fear was a powerful motivator, but hope was an even stronger force. By showing both civilizations that their war was unnecessary and that cooperation offered benefits beyond their imagination, humanity had turned potential enemies into eager allies. Signal both governments that we accept their requests for formal negotiations, she ordered. But the meetings will be held here in neutral space with both sides present simultaneously. The first Tri-Species Alliance Council meeting convened aboard the Defiant. 72 hours later, the ship main hangar had been converted into a diplomatic conference center with representatives from 3 completely different evolutionary paths, sitting around a circular table designed by Chief Engineer Brooks Admiral Kessitar, had arrived with a full diplomatic team, including xenobiologists, tactical analysts, and several religious leaders whose crystalline forms glowed with spiritual significance. Commander Vexhai brought cybernetically enhanced negotiators, industrial engineers, and military strategists, whose artificial implants hummed with processing power. Captain Morgan arrived with Lieutenant Walsh, Chief Engineer Brooks, and Communications Officer Phillips, 4 humans, who looked remarkably ordinary compared to their alien counterparts, yet commanded respectful attention from beings whose civilization spanned centuries of spacefaring experience. "Let me begin," Morgan said, "by sharing what we know about the Silence and what we believe will be required to face them successfully." The holographic display materialized above the table, showing the advancing dark mass in terrifying detail. As the assembled representatives watched the display, provided real-time analysis of the Silence movement patterns, consumption rates, and projected arrival timeline. "Their advance appears systematic," explained Lieutenant Walsh. "They do not simply destroy star systems, they drain them completely of all energy, matter, and information. Based on our observations, they seem to be harvesting something fundamental about reality itself." One of Kessitar, science advisors whose crystalline form resonated with harmonic frequencies when he spoke, asked the question everyone was thinking. How do we fight something that consumes entire star systems? Chief Engineer Brooks activated another section of the display showing theoretical defensive technologies. "We do not fight them in the traditional sense. We make ourselves indigestible to their consumption. Process," demanded one of Vexhai tactical specialists. "The Silence appears to feed on conventional matter and energy." Brooks continued, "But we have developed technologies based on probability manipulation, quantum uncertainty, and what we call consensual reality engineering. We have learned to convince the universe that we exist in ways that do not follow normal rules, like your teleportation technology," Kessitar observed. "Exactly. If the Silence consumes normal matter and energy, we simply become abnormal matter and energy. We exist in quantum superposition. We manipulate probability fields. We operate outside the standard physics they are designed to harvest." Vexhai leaned forward, his cybernetic implants glowing with interest. "You are proposing to make our entire civilization impossible." "Not impossible," Morgan corrected with a slight smile. "Just improbable enough that reality is not quite sure we are really there." The concept was staggering. They were discussing fundamentally altering the nature of existence for 3 entire species. "What would you require from us?" asked Kessitar. Lead negotiator Morgan expression became serious. "Complete technological integration. We need Zephyrian crystalline computing matrices to process the quantum calculations required for large-scale probability manipulation. We need hegemony, cybernetic, enhancement technology to interface organic minds with probability-based systems, and we need both civilizations, industrial capacity to construct the infrastructure required to protect inhabited systems, and in return, Morgan said, we share everything. Every wormhole we have mapped, every technological advancement we have developed, every strategic advantage we possess. We become true allies, not temporary partners." Phillips activated a new section of the holographic display showing preliminary designs for integrated technologies. Zephyrian crystal matrices interfaced with human probability drives and hegemony, cybernetic control systems. These are theoretical designs for what we are calling consensus stations, she explained. Massive installations, positioned around inhabited star systems capable of convincing reality that those systems exist in quantum superposition, present and absent simultaneously. When the silence arrives, Brooks added, they will find star systems that are simultaneously there and not there. Since they cannot consume what does not definitely exist, they will move on to easier targets, 4 years, 8 months. Morgan replied without hesitation. We have exactly that long to integrate 3 completely different technological philosophies, construct approximately 2,000 consensus stations, and test the system before the silence reaches inhabited space. The vote was unanimous across all 3 species. The galaxy had found hope in the impossible.